Okay, we're going to dive straight in with our guest on this week's Sky Cricket podcast with myself and Nas, because we've got Johnny Grave, who's the Chief Executive of the West Indies Cricket Board, with us, and there's lots we want to discuss with him. Last time we saw him was in Ahmedabad just before Christmas, when he was in India for ICC meetings during the World Cup, but his team weren't, which is symptomatic of some of the challenges facing West Indies right now. And we're talking on the day that his team have just gone down in the first test to Australia in Adelaide overnight. So Johnny, welcome. It's about -5 this morning in London when myself and Nas were scraping the ice off our car windscreens. Rather better for you in Adelaide, in Antigua, no doubt, where you've been for the last few years now. For those who don't know, just explain a little bit about your journey, because you're the first non-West Indian to lead the West Indies Cricket Board. Just explain how you got from England and Surrey to where you are now.
Yeah, good morning. I mean, it's definitely warmer here. But yeah, I've been now, believe it or not, here in the role for 7 years. So it was 7 years pretty much the day that I first came out to Antigua, having sort of been in discussions with the board about an opportunity to replace their CEO who was moving on. So yeah, I've had, I don't know quite, but 24 years-ish in cricket. First 7 years working at Surrey County Cricket Club, which, as you both know, is the best club in the world. And then,
Steady.
Thanks for joining us, Johnny.
and then at the PCA, so dealing with all the players in the English system, and particularly looking after the commercial rights of the England team, and did that for 10 years before this opportunity came up. So, it's still a massive honour and privilege. And as you both know in detail, it's an enormous challenge. But one that I've been enjoying and continue to enjoy, and looking ahead to the next 12 months. I don't think it's going to be any less of a challenge than it was when I first joined, albeit, the world of cricket is ever changing, so the challenges never stop.
Before we get onto those challenges, just has it been an enjoyable period for you? I mean, you've got a young family as well. There seem to me to be worse places to bring up a young family than in Antigua. I mean, we'll talk about the challenges to come, but it sounds like a pretty good opportunity.
Yeah, I think the kids, they're living in paradise. So yeah, they're definitely enjoying it. I think, I'm still enjoying it. It's been a difficult 7 months. I certainly don't miss COVID, which was probably the most difficult 2 years of the time that I've been out here. But yeah, it's a wonderful part of the world, as you both know. And I firmly believe there's nowhere better to watch or play cricket than the Caribbean. So in that respect, it's been hugely enjoyable.
Are you missing England, Johnny? Are you missing getting me all those little earners you used to get me for the PCA, all those wonderful after-dinner speeches and all that?
Oh, I definitely miss working with you on a regular basis, Nas. But no, I miss going to the Emirates Stadium, and that's probably about it. And certainly looking at you both wearing jumpers, and I'm sure it will be dark at 3:00 today. I'm not missing those aspects, or London commuting for certain.
Right, you've gone 1-0 down. Adelaide has just finished a few hours ago. One assumes you may be caught up with that overnight. Let's talk about the real bright spot, actually, to come out of it from your perspective. Shamar Joseph, what a story, first of all. Even by Guyanese standards, he's from a fairly remote village. I think you've got to get up, 4-hour boat ride to get up to the Kanji River to where he's from, and gave up his job about 18 months ago to be a security guard, to have a crack at professional cricket, and suddenly finds himself in the West Indies team. Wicket, first ball, 5 on debut.
Yeah, I mean, you know Ghana better than me. It's an unbelievable pace and a passion of cricket that I would think would rival anywhere in the world. And he burst onto the scene in first class cricket last year with taking a fifer that sort of turned everyone's head with genuine pace. And sometimes, you get bowlers coming through here and, everyone speaks of how fast they're bowling, but he was one that every single person genuinely said was bowling with fire. And he very sort of quickly followed that into, he was a late call up to the CPL and then did well in that, and then followed that form into our regional Super 50 tournament and got selection to 18 cricket. So again, another, I think, important part of our system is to have regular 18 cricket to give these guys more opportunity to hone their skills against better opposition and see if they can make that small step up before the giant leap into Test cricket. And every opportunity he's been given, he's taken, as you've seen, and the world are seeing. Like many of our players, they've got fantastic stories and unbelievable dedication to get to where they can get to. But he, yeah, I mean, I wasn't necessarily surprised with the way he bowled, but I've certainly never seen him bat like that. So yeah, it was just an unbelievable debut, and what a place to make it. And yeah, I'm sure now, from no one knowing who he was, there's a large percentage of cricket fans that not only know a little bit more about him, but also excited to see him play again, which is great.
I guess one of the challenges will be keeping him under your wing, as it were. We'll talk about many of the challenges facing your cricket at the moment, but that is one, the attractions of the franchise leagues. And we know that one or two of your perhaps first choice, who would be first choice players, are not in Australia right now, like Shai Hope and Jason Holder.
Yeah, look, it's an ongoing challenge. It's not one that particularly overly concerns me. I mean, we do pay our players very, very well. I think there's a perception in the world that we pay them pittance. I think most of our top international players, when you include and factor in Caribbean Premier League contracts, are probably earning $500,000 a year. So it's not like they're playing for us for free. But yeah, the challenges exist, and we're, like all the boards, fighting to find the balance and the compromise. And at times, like we did with this, we just can't compromise. It's a World Test Championship obligation. We acknowledge it clashes with other lucrative leagues, and we accept and respect that players have that choice. But it was great to see not only Shamar's sort of shine, but also for him to talk so passionately about Test cricket. Look, I think we're not playing that much Test cricket, unfortunately, so that's another factor. But I would hope that, subject to selection, and obviously I can't influence that, but you'd like to think that he'll be showing the English fans live what he can do in the summer in July, which is great.
Would it be fair to say you've changed your approach? You talked there about the players have got choices; they will make their choices. You're not, you can't really influence that, even though you're paying them reasonably well, and therefore the motivation for playing for West Indies is strong. But, a few years ago, it seemed to me that West Indies had a very different approach, and that led to some pretty difficult times between the Players Association and the board. There were a lot of fallouts, a lot of difficult conversations between players and administrators. Would it be fair to say that you've changed your approach a little bit since then?
I think probably the first task that I was given by the board was to improve player relations, which on the face of it wasn't particularly difficult. We went through a period, particularly 2015 to 2017, before I came, when, through no real fault of the West Indies board at the time, but England were touring for Test matches in April because they were going down to the Southern Hemisphere that needed them in the winter, and then obviously they needed their own home series in the English summer. So West Indies in sort of April was great for fans and a time where they could come, and the board weren't really in a position to ever say no, and we probably still aren't. To say no to an England tour, but that obviously put players right up against the IPL. And then similarly, in terms of the reciprocal deal, England would want us coming in the summer, and in 2017 that clashed with the CPL. So the first year that I joined, we played Pakistan in the IPL window, and obviously their players are all available because they don't play in the IPL. And then we played England in the CPL window, so players had to effectively give up both earning opportunities, which was never going to be sustainable. So pretty obviously, we agreed, and very quickly, with all the players, that we would give them an exclusive window for the IPL and for the Caribbean Premier League, which was in our own interest to do so. And since then, there wasn't a huge amount of trust back then, but it's been one of the things that we've been really focused on in terms of never compromising that promise. We've actually gone as far as to put it into all the player contracts that we can't do that, and it's something that we've kept sacrosanct. And I think now we just got to rethink and pivot again, because what used to be fine in terms of the balance of an IPL and CPL window, the earning opportunities now, particularly in this period, sort of January, February, with 4 leagues going up against each other for overseas players. You got the ILT20 in the UAE, you've got the SA20 in South Africa, you got the Big Bash still finishing, in the Bangladesh Premier League going on, and in a few weeks the Pakistan Super League will be starting. And they're all leagues that offer 6-figure sums for 3 weeks work and 4 overs a game for bowlers. And the opportunity, I guess, is something that players at certain times in their careers just can't say no to. And unfortunately, at this stage, with the Future Tours program set, we can't always create the perfect window for them to go and do that and still represent the West Indies. So it's about balance and compromise. And yeah, hopefully in the next cycle of ICC events, we can get a better schedule for both the boards and also the players.
As it felt in the last couple of weeks, couple of months, you can't win. After years of going against the players or to clash with the players and getting criticism from the players and almost shooting yourselves in the foot as West Indies cricket, even though you went on to win a couple of World T20s and Darren Sammy at presentations having a little dig back. Now you've gone the other way and looked after players and world cricket, and some ex-world cricketers, along with what South Africa are doing, are sort of picking you up on not sending your best team. It is an impossible situation for West Indies cricket at the moment. And does something need to be done about it?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of people don't really understand the economic situation here, and the major boards are blessed with most, professional sports will have most of their revenue coming from their home broadcaster. Since the explosion of TV rights on the back of satellite TV, that's really changed the entire economic landscape of cricket. And we're 15 countries, independent sovereign nations, spreading from Guyana in South America all the way over to Jamaica. And there is no major TV network that could ever even pay for the production costs, which, as you both know, we're not half a dozen cameras. They're big operations, and the minimum standards around DRS and everything else, when you've got to move that across water on private charter flights because of the schedule, and spreading cricket around the region, makes this place very, very expensive to operate. And, we're also on a side of the map that no one else is. So every time we go on an international engagement, we're spending more than anyone else on what are now minimum standards, business class flights for everyone and quite often on very popular tourist routes. So everything is very, very expensive. So percentage wise, our cost base is huge, and we're obviously low income in terms of sponsors and broadcasters. Now, West Indies cricket are not going to be able to change that in the short term. We're doing everything we can to grow the game in the Americas, and we think that will be an important long-term strategy. But in the short term, we are disadvantaged by what's happened in terms of the explosion of media rights around the world, and the Future Tours program, which on one hand gives certainty of fixtures. The economic model of that also disadvantages the West Indies, because we pay all our costs when we go away, and yes, we get to keep the revenue when we welcome teams here in the Caribbean, but obviously our ability to raise enough revenue from those home tours in a small market is again disadvantaged. So yeah, it's difficult, but it's we know probably in the short and medium and probably even in the long term, it's not going to fundamentally change. So we can't sort of sit and wait. So we've got to be as smart as we can be, putting in strategies to try and counterbalance that and still, get on and produce what's now, I think, 11 West Indies teams that they're pretty much playing all year round.
Just worthwhile trying to explain to people, if you go back, say, 30 years, that the model was a little different, wasn't it? That both costs and the revenues from tours were shared between the home board and the visiting board. And that has changed in more recent times, so that the home board pays for costs but keeps the revenue of a tour. And essentially that is what you're getting at, that disadvantages your region as a high-cost region because of the fact that you're flying everybody from island to island and putting people up in hotels that are inexpensive tourist destinations, but your revenue is low. Just perhaps give people an indication of what the income stream is for West Indies Cricket Board right now per year.
Well, I guess we've been very fortunate that India and England continue to tour here regularly. So we've had 2022, 2023 have been great years for us. So and we didn't get into too many difficulties because we're not highly geared in that respect as the other boards are. we were able to sort of navigate COVID. So coming out of all of that, we're in a reasonable position, and our turnover probably for the last few years has been around the sort of 70 million mark, where normally par would be around 50 million. But
put that into contrast. I mean, what's England's income at the moment? About 300 per year.
Yeah, in US dollars, it's probably closer to 400. Yeah. But yeah, it's and Australia would be a similar number, maybe slightly less, around the low 300s in US dollars. So, we're small in that respect, but obviously, unlike some of the other boards that may have a similar income to us, the sort of the Pakistans, the South Africas, the New Zealands, obviously their cost base tends to be lower than ours for the reasons that you said. But that biggest reason is that our TV production costs are around $5 million a year, and obviously our local TV deal is probably low seven figures. So we're in a deficit before a ball is bowled, whereas the likes of England and Australia will be at plus 200, 300 million, because not only do Sky and Fox and Seven and these companies pay them a large rights fee for their domestic rights, they also pay and cover for all the television production costs. So it's that double whammy effect where we start at a minus number and everyone else starts at a significant plus. So we're behind the curve before we've even started.
Just going to read you a quote you gave in an interview recently. "The revenue share model is completely broken. If we really want to operate as a cricketing community, we are only as strong as the weakest team, and we've got to change the mindset of bilateral cricket." If you were in charge of the ICC, if you were in charge of all cricket, what would you want changing? How would you want to look ahead?
Well, I think what we've tried to do is just start the conversation, really. So in 2018, we wrote a couple of strategic discussion papers for the ICC that we tabled, one on regulations around T20 League, because we only saw them growing and we only saw them competing, and ultimately pulling money out of the market that was, for us, was already small, and having to compete with players. And we knew that we could never compete with the players. So we couldn't do what other boards maybe do, which is just increase our cost base, because the knock-on effect of that is you don't have any money to fix other parts of the cricket system and your schools programs and everything else. So we also wrote an economic cricket paper which put forward a number of ideas around how we could better share our revenue. I probably, in the context of that quote, I might have been coming in off my long run, but yeah, it is something that concerns us, because what we want to do is, and I think we want the major boards who, the first point, are fantastic when it comes to touring. There's nothing more the BCCI could do for West Indies cricket than do what they do, which is at every opportunity they bring their teams here and tour us. And similarly with England, they came in December before Christmas. They're coming again in November. So they can't really do any more, which means, unless we can really address the model and the relationships at a different conversation, the sort of the status quo, just in my opinion, isn't sustainable. So, look, I guess the biggest sort of example I can give you and viewers is, our women's team went to Australia to play 6 matches in September, which is at the start of our financial year, and rightly they now fly business class, as we've made that move, as many boards have. In flight costs and match fees that again increasing. That probably cost us $750,000 for a tour that we received not $1 of revenue for. And then that's compounded by the fact now, I think we just booked our white ball players to Australia. You're probably looking at almost, $1.5–2 million worth of costs to get the team down under, or the 3 teams as we now have in Tests, ODIs and T20s, when we pay their business class flights, which are 3 business class flights to get there. And that's once we can get them into the UK or the US. And then we have to pay all their match fees as well. And again, we have, at the moment, we're still in discussions with Australian broadcasters. So we literally are getting zero revenue from this tour, and also zero revenue at the moment from the Australia market. So, again, you're putting in excess of $2 million on your cost base and absolutely no revenue coming in. So that makes everything very challenging. And we've discussed things like revenue sharing. Do we pool our rights and sell them on a collective basis like the ICC do for World Cup events? We've talked about, 20% shares of revenues given to visiting teams, or ICC creating a test fund where things like DRS in terms of minimum standards or international flights could be centrally booked and paid for, so that you're sort of neutralizing and sharing those costs and spreading them around all the participating teams and making that an obligation and cost to the league rather than the individual participants. But I think what we're trying to do is just get the conversation started. We always look at the FTP as in terms of who's playing who when, but in our opinion, the economic model should be looked at first, and then how many times we play and where we play. Because again, everyone just wants to play England and India, and when you get to host them, you want to play as many matches as possible, and that obviously consequently means that there's not enough time in the calendar for those other teams to get them. So again, you've got the advantage of the revenue share model at ICC that favours the bigger markets. You've then got the bilateral model that favours the bigger markets who can generate more home income and keep that. And then you've also got the other thing, which is the big three are playing against themselves more than anyone else. So they're getting more revenue from within bilateral cricket as well, because England will have more games against Australia and India compared to the likes of South Africa, Pakistan and ourselves.
Final question on this kind of the economics of the game before we move on to the general state of cricket in the West Indies, which I know myself and Nas want to talk to you about, because it kind of means a lot to us as well for reasons we'll go into. But final question on the economics. You talked about some of the problems there. Do you sense that there's a bit of a consensus forming around the need to change one or two aspects of the revenue share model? Because in the end, as you rightly say, cricket is only as strong as its kind of weakest constituent part. And for Test cricket and international cricket to be strong, there needs to be the biggest number of strongest teams. So do you sense a bit of a consensus forming on the need to change?
Look, you have to be an optimist in this role, and I continue to be one. But I certainly think the leadership team at BCCI and Cricket Australia and ECB, and as well as senior leadership at ICC, they do see and understand the issues, and I think that's the first base. And I think probably the fact that we've seen and we haven't gone away. I've never stopped talking about this, and the players have never stopped performing. We've competed and played in great Test series against England, and we currently hold the Richard Botham Trophy. I think what our team are doing down under. We've not got enough runs, and maybe if the umpire had given Travis Head out and the DRS and the umpire's call, those small moments in Test matches where I'm not saying we would have won. I'm just saying it would have been closer, and therefore maybe rather than the lazy narrative by fans being what a waste of time playing the West Indies, they'd be saying actually that was some compelling cricket and good entertainment. And I think that's what we're hoping will happen. That we're not going to go away. We're still investing massively in our cricket system. We're still very committed to the red ball format, and hopefully our team will demonstrate that, and there will be more moments where fans around the world will see the passion that still exists for the game here, and that whilst our white ball teams in recent history have been very successful, that doesn't mean that we're not interested or we're thinking about not playing Test cricket. So yeah, I think the challenge is for the game of cricket to just sort of start to look in more of a community sense, less self-interest, and think, how can we help the game? How can we help the game grow? And that's not just about new markets. That's also about growing within our respective boards. And the game came together brilliantly in COVID to help each other out. And I think if we could continue that as a legacy to that difficult period, and just and we're not asking for huge changes, just small changes would make a massive difference to the sort of the system here in the West Indies. And I'm hopeful for change. Would it happen quickly? Almost certainly not. Everything's locked in really till 2027, but hopefully we can have those conversations now about what the world looks like 27 to 31, that 4-year period between the men's World Cups. And small changes can be made, and the world is changing so quickly. We can't think of what is fit for purpose now is going to be fit for purpose in 4 years' time. And I think many people around the world are starting to question whether the current status quo is in fact fit for purpose.
Nas, you made your debut against West Indies back in 1989 at Sabina Park, I reckon. Johnny there is talking about the kind of passion around West Indies cricket. Just perhaps go back in time and give us a sense of that occasion at Sabina Park. I mean, I know what it's like to play there.
Yeah.
It's a pretty hostile place it used to be, both bowling-wise and crowd-wise.
It was a long time ago for a start, and the previous tour to that was at Sabina Park, Patrick Patterson splattering Mike Gatting's nose. And with a nose the size of mine, I was a little bit concerned. And who happens to be bowling the first ball at me? Patrick Patterson at Sabina Park. Just out of Durham University, I was. I think that's why I know you were very keen to get Johnny on and discuss all things West Indian cricket, because to people of our age and older, West Indies cricket is intrinsic to our upbringing. I was brought up on 5-0 drubbings by the West Indies, watching that great Clive Lloyd side, then the great Viv Richards sides win World Cups, hammer us, go around the world with style and flair. Then we go on A tours. And the depth, I was going to ask Johnny there about the depth of West Indies cricket. Is Shamar Joseph just a one-off, or where are they with depth of their cricket? Because we used to play A-tours out there, and they were seriously good cricketers. The Winston Benjamins, etc., running in at us, steaming in at us. And then first ball in Test match cricket, Sabina Park. Then watching you in Jamaica getting peppered by Courtney Walsh because you were our captain. That was great fun watching you get peppered. And to be fair, actually, listening to Johnny there, that I wish he thinks that we can have England all the time, because their record against England of late is tremendous. And obviously the England fans and the West Indies fans, when you play cricket in the Caribbean, it is as much about the fans, and we'll get on to the World Cup that's coming out up there in June. It is about the fans as much as anything else. I used to stand in the field watching the fans in Antigua, Jamaica, wherever, loving every minute of it.
So, Johnny, that's the question, really. We're going back in time there to how it was. And, of course, everything changes, and it would be unrealistic to expect West Indies to dominate world cricket as they did during that golden period, given the resources, both population-wise and financial, that we've talked about. But we go to the Caribbean quite a lot, and I would say that there is not now the passion for the game that there was, that the game is not as part of the national conversation as it was, that you don't see as many people playing the game as were. Is that a fair kind of reflection or not? Am I seeing things wrong there?
I think that's a fair reflection, but I would say that's probably a fair reflection around the world. Yeah. I certainly don't think it's more stark here. I think the passion, it still exists. Are people busier? Is there more demand on their time? Is it, are there challenges for people to play the game like they would have done 30 years ago? I think they definitely are when it sort of comes to schools cricket and club cricket. But I think the general passion of cricket, within the Caribbean, pretty much, across all the territories, it still exists. And when you see the CPL, which is put on at 7:30, when our fans are able to attend in a format that is more user friendly in terms of a 3-hour game, and you see the absolute packed stands in all territories, of which, again, people need to put it in the context. Most of the countries are tiny in comparison to the size of the stadium. So a full Providence in Georgetown is a big percentage of not just the Georgetown population, but the whole population of Guyana. When you get 15,000 in Kensington Oval, again, in percentage terms, the population of Barbados, that's an enormous crowd. And they're certainly no quieter than in your day. There's certainly no.
But you're drawing sorry to interrupt. You're drawing a distinction there between the crowds for the CPL. I mean, for any Test match series other than England, who bring obviously lots of fans to the Caribbean for those tests, for any other Test series, you'd probably look round a pretty empty stadium, wouldn't you, in the Caribbean? Do you think the days of Test cricket as a spectator sport are gone in the Caribbean?
I want to say no, but the reality is that, like many other territories, trying to get full stadiums for a test match that you hope will last 4 or 5 days, I think probably is unlikely, particularly depending on the season that we play them. Playing in the tourist islands and playing them, they're during the day. There's an opportunity cost for people to attend. There's the match ticket cost, which is pretty low, but it's the opportunity of giving up a day's work or 3 or 4 jobs to go and watch cricket. That's maybe something that you do for one day of the test match. But again, with the population sizes and the stands as big as they are, you're looking at crowds of 3 or 4 or 5,000 of local fans, which on TV and camera in stadiums of 15,000, look small and sparse. But it's probably not realistic to think that we can get 15,000 local fans into a test match every day during the week, because effectively that would mean either everyone attending every day or pretty much the entire country going for one day's play. So I don't think that's realistic, but I wouldn't use that as a barometer of interest. There is still a massive passion for cricket. It's still probably the number 2 sport in most of the territories in terms of what young people want to play, and there's still a lot.
What's the number 1? Football.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, in some of the territories, you'll have track and field at 3 or netball, and but yeah, the number 1 by a significant distance is football, because it's so much easier to play and so less costly to produce a football pitch versus a cricket pitch for starters.
And before we move on to the World Cup, which is coming in June, I know it's a very important tournament for you. One final question about the players there. I bumped into young Jacob Bethel over Christmas in Barbados, who is obviously making his way at Warwickshire now, and has pivoted towards England as Jofra Archer did. It's a small number of cricketers that you lose to England, but they seem to be among your most promising. Is that a frustration?
Nas, did he bump into Josh over Christmas?
They had a night out, that is for certain.
Look, again, I think if you spend too much time focusing on that, you're not really focusing on the bigger picture. And I think the best example of that for me was when we were trying to take a team to Bangladesh during COVID, and the Bangladesh Cricket Board had no cricket up to that point. No one wanted to go to Bangladesh, and they were desperate for cricket. And we made the decision. We were due to tour them under the FTP that many boards had thrown out the window, and we were desperately trying to honour those obligations. And we had a meeting with all the players, and as we were getting accustomed to, we asked them to confirm whether they were in or out, but to think about it and give them 24 hours. And as the WhatsApp messages dropped in with, sorry, I'm not available, I called Jimmy Adams. I think we were up to 11 players that had said no. And he said, if we need to go, we'll find you the players. And so we had a very difficult conversation with the Bangladesh Cricket Board, but we couldn't really sort of let them down. So we said, okay, look, we'll come. And I think at that point, we might have had eight new players in our test team. And we went and won the series. Carl Mayers, that no one had heard of, got a double 100 on day 5 on a turning pitch in Dhaka. And you think, those players that came through that series, if we hadn't have gone, if we made the easy choice to go on, it probably would have been, I know firsthand how devastating economically that would have been to the Bangladesh Cricket Board, and how they may have struggled for months and months after that. But actually by going, we were able to endorse that it was very safe and it was fine. And then having won, we sort of unearthed another 3 or 4 players. And a bit like this series, Shamar Joseph wouldn't have played if a few other players hadn't been injured. If Jaden Seals, for example, hadn't been injured on the 18 tour, Shamar might not have even been there. So every time that a player rules himself out because they want to go and play somewhere else for economic reasons, if a player is injured or a player decides to go and ply their trade and fight with 350 professionals in England, we just have to say good luck to them, and wish them well. And most of us still keep an eye on their career and hope they go on and do well. And but yeah, it's not something that we're overtly bothered about, because it's not really something that we can control, and there are things that we can control that we can improve, and that's where we need to focus all our time and energy on, rather than getting frustrated if one or two players decide to follow in their father's footsteps rather than their mother's.
Talking of following in their father's footsteps, can Josh De Carey's go out and play for the West Indies? Can we have something in reverse?
Yes, he can.
I don't know. Listening to Johnny talk about how much they're paying their players, I think he might be on the first plane over. Right, Johnny, the T20 World Cup, which is coming. The first fixtures, America against Canada, the oldest international fixture of all. Talk to us a little bit about what you're hoping to get out of the tournament and how important it is for the Caribbean.
Yeah, look, it's the first, the last 8-year cycle of ICC. We didn't host any men's fixtures, so to have a men's World Cup is massive for the entire region. It's probably going to be, the only time in the next 10 years we get to host one. So, firstly, we want to welcome the whole world to the Caribbean. We want to make sure that the players, get to enjoy everything that is a World Cup in the Caribbean, and more importantly, make sure that they get really good practice facilities and match facilities so that they can prepare and put on the best show for the world. And then in terms of, the US, it's something that we thought that if we just put a bid in ourselves, it was unlikely probably to be successful. But we knew there was a growing strategy of ICC to grow the game, and that we were playing in the United States on a sort of annual basis, a couple of T20s a year in Florida. And so we decided to join forces with the US and put in a joint bid. They were in talks around their Major League Cricket at that time, and had big hopes for that. And so we put forward a joint bid. Since then, it's been, and we were successful. Since then, it's been quite difficult, I would say, to keep to the honouring that. But we've done as best we can. We've searched high and wide to find suitable venues in the US. And we've had some setbacks in that journey over the last couple of years, but we've now found 3 venues, 2 of which are established. One that is the Lauderhill Stadium in Broward, where we've played a number of times, which is an established international cricket venue that will obviously have improvements and enhancements for the World Cup. And then the Grand Prairie Cricket Ground, which is a redeveloped minor league baseball ground on the outskirts of Dallas, that we're going to use. And again, Major League Cricket would have enhanced it for their second edition. We're going to go a step further for the World Cup. So two cricket grounds that exist, and there are wickets and there are the facilities, and then one where, as of probably last week, was just a park. So in Long Island, New York, in Eisenhower Park, we're going to be building a modular stadium, and it's a vast site, 33,000 seats, with drop-in wickets and a completely relayed outfield, and that work has just started, and will be completed in early May, ready for the World Cup in June. So 16 matches in the US, 39 in the Caribbean. We've got the semi-finals in Guyana and Trinidad, and then the final in Kensington Oval in Barbados. And we're hugely excited about in the next few weeks going on sale with tickets, and then welcoming the world here for what we think will probably be the most exciting T20 World Cup ever. And keeping to some of the previous men's events here, there might well be some major upsets, because there's going to be 20 teams competing, with 2 teams from each of the 4 groups going into a Super 8 phase. And I'm sure, as we've seen in recent times, and as we know firsthand through World Cup qualifiers, there's no such thing now as really an easy international game, and the T20 format we know provides a bit more of a leveler. So it's going to be really exciting cricket for the whole month of June.
As your responsibility just for the Caribbean bit of the tournament, or do you have a kind of joint responsibility for the American bit as well? I'm just thinking about all these unbuilt ground. If it doesn't go quite according to plan, is it your neck on the block, or are you just responsible for the Caribbean bit?
Well, technically, we would be responsible for the whole thing at the moment, on the basis that we haven't entered into any legal agreement with our friends at the ICC around those 16 games. So at the moment, we're fully on the hook, but we we hope to de-risk that position at least legally over the next few weeks. But there's no, I mean, we're the full member, and yeah, we have taken as much as we possibly can do to help that. We don't want to take our eye off the ball here in the West Indies, which you rightly say is our main focus. But it's been really important for us for many reasons, as I articulated earlier. We want to grow the sport in America. We've got a huge Caribbean and West Indian diaspora in America, but also in terms of, you know, commercial market, in terms of being able to play cricket at a time where our fans can attend. You know, we need a big US network to want cricket content, to want, you know, the best content in the region coming from the West Indies, playing the biggest teams in the world. We need that financial support to try and address some of the issues I spoke about earlier. So on many levels, we are doing as much as we can to make sure that the US is as successful as it possibly can be, and also, you know, whatever happens there will have an impact, and we want this to be a joint World Cup. So yeah, we're very much partnering with them on absolutely everything, and shortly we'll be putting some additional resources into the US, which we're looking forward to handing over a lot of the work to.
What about timings of the games, Johnny? And it sort of ties into what we started this discussion about, you know, TV and TV audiences and Indian market. You know, ideally, you'd want every game 6 o'clock in the evening. T20 is best under lights, but you are going to have to think about that Indian market, aren't you? What are the timings of these games going to look like?
Yeah, looking at our bid, we said one of the advantages that we've got, and the window for this World Cup with so many teams for the first time, and having that Indian Premier League finishing at the end of May, and then the English summer starting as quickly as possible after this. All the matches are sort of squeezed into the month of June, which creates challenges. But one of the things that we said in our bid was we could play matches in three times of the day across the different time zones, and therefore, you know, give fans in all parts of the world the opportunity to watch in their prime time. So, you know, morning matches for subcontinent, afternoon games for Europe and Africa, and evening games for the West Indies and to a certain extent, you know, Australia and New Zealand. I think, like everything, there's balance and compromise. I think where we're ending up will be, you know, maybe about half the games in the morning, around sort of 10:30, where we've traditionally had to play India, when West Indies have played them in bilateral cricket. A handful of matches in the afternoon, and then sort of again around sort of 40% in the evening, and probably again going later than we would ideally want, probably playing at around, you know, 8:30 at night, so that it's morning time in the subcontinent rather than very early morning time. So yeah, compromises are being made, and yeah, we unfortunately have to acknowledge the you know, the ICC, and you know, as a full member, we know only too well how much the Indian broadcasters are putting into the game. So yeah, it's trying to find the balance, and hopefully we'll do that. And certainly in terms of local fans, every single territory will have the opportunity to have evening games, probably outside of New York, which won't have, as part of the building there, won't have permanent floodlights or floodlights. So but all the matches in New York will be during the day.
But no games in Jamaica, I think I'm right in saying.
No World Cup games. No, we're taking proper cricket to Jamaica in the next few weeks. We're taking a 4-day first-class cricket to Sabina Park, Goodwin Park, and Kensington Cricket Club. Yeah, but no World Cup games in Jamaica, and unfortunately Dominica, who have done so much work to Windsor Park since it was devastated by Hurricane Maria, they've just run out of time to put in new floodlights and a few other improvements, so they pulled out just before the end of last year. But 6 venues in the Caribbean, Guyana, Trinidad, Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Antigua, and yeah, all looking forward to welcoming the world to this part of the world to watch the best format in cricket from a fan perspective. And as Nas said, I think we're trying to get as many evening games as we can, because we would 100% agree that, you know, Caribbean T20 cricket under lights in those grounds, when they're full with a mixture of home fans and away fans, is a unique atmosphere, and one we want to recreate for this event.
And final question, really, before we let you go. I mean, I think it would be fair to say that the 2007 World Cup, which is the 50-over World Cup in the Caribbean, didn't quite have the transformative effect that people in the Caribbean hoped it would have. I think that's fair to say that it was a bit of a damp squib in terms of perhaps the atmosphere, that nobody really got a particularly Caribbean flavour in that 2007 World Cup. Are you hopeful that this one will be a bit different?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I think in 2018 when we hosted the Women's T20 World Cup and we got big crowds in St. Lucia and Antigua for the final, and sort of captured the imagination of the cricket-loving public here. No, but we did work very hard with ICC to ensure that fans could bring in their cooler boxes, their drums, their trumpets, their flags, and we expect that to happen in June. We want our West Indian fans to watch cricket in the way that they're used to watching, in the way that the world wants them to come in and watch, which is to be standing on their seats and being noisy and cussing each other out and enjoying the cricket. And it's really important that we allow fans to do that, as well as obviously adhere to as many of the ICC protocols as we have to. But I think we'll get the balance right, and I think it'll be very welcoming to home fans and very accessible from a price point for home fans. And we're looking forward to seeing, especially for the neutral games, just fans just in the different countries, just attending, enjoying the cricket, and showing the world what a fantastic place this is. But we're for some of the games it's going to be a struggle. I mean, the best thing about June, I guess, is that it's still school time here. The holidays don't begin to the end of June, so hopefully a great opportunity for us to get thousands of school kids to experience World Cup cricket and hopefully ignite their passion to become long-term supporters and lovers of the game. So we're looking at the early morning games as an opportunity, I guess, rather than than getting too upset about it. And certainly from a facilities perspective, you're right. 2007 built all these stadiums. We're looking at this one around sort of renovation, but particularly in terms of the wickets, and we're relaying a number of the squares. We've got some experts in the region that are working alongside our curators to do that work. So hopefully the legacy from this World Cup isn't any more stadiums, but it is bigger squares and relayed surfaces that will hopefully stand us in very good stead as a legacy to produce better cricketers by giving them better, not just sort of playing facilities, but actually practice wickets. We're looking forward to that and ensuring that legacy isn't just for the 6 territories that are hosting games, that we also go and do that work in St Kitts and Grenada and Jamaica and other places that haven't had the World Cup.
West Indies to win the T20 World Cup or Arsenal to win the Premier League? Johnny, which one are you having?
Ooh. You said if you said Champions League, I might have had to think. West Indies to get their third T20 World Cup. I think in fairy tales that would be amazing. You said earlier around Darren Sammy lifting it in 2016. Darren Sammy to be the head coach now, with a very different relationship with us as the administrators of the game, would really demonstrate that we are, back being united, back focusing on how we can work together and improve the cricket here, and still take on the best in the world. And we're actually coming in reasonable form. We beat South Africa in South Africa, which is no mean feat. We beat India at home in T20 cricket, and yes, England were missing a few players, but we still beat England here just before Christmas. So I certainly think in T20 format we can compete. We've had two very disappointing World Cups in the T20 format, as you know, in the UAE and Australia. So we need to get back to the top of the world, and no better place to do it than lifting that trophy in Kensington come end of June.
Well, no doubt you've got a lot of work to do as well between now and then, given what's happening in America. And all your territories as well. But thanks for taking the time out to join us. Good luck in the next Test match and the rest of the games in Australia. And fingers crossed, we'll see you in June for that World Cup.
Cheers, Johnny.
Cheers, Johnny.
Thanks, guys.
Well, West Indies didn't make the 50 over World Cup. We were there just in India before Christmas, but they'd have a strong chance, wouldn't they, in the T20 format, I think?
Oh, absolutely. Listening to Johnny there and the results they've had recently, they're still a very fine, very talented T20 side and would be one of the favourites at home, know the conditions. I think the earlier point of the chat was so vital. I think we've got to the stage now, and I want your opinion on this, where almost like the talking and the sort of the old cliched term like world cricket needs West Indies cricket to be strong. We've been through that now. it's come to a stage where really world cricket needs to look at itself. Is it happy with three nations just going off and having all the money and all the games? Does it need to look after everyone? Where do you think we are? Does it time for the talking to stop?
Yes, but I also think it's quite late in the day. I mean, I was quite pessimistic about Test cricket and international cricket the moment the kind of free market came into the game, which is the IPL really in about 2008. And I always thought the consequences of that, unless administrators got together to really think about the future direction of the game, I always thought that in the end the market will win and the players will go where the money is. And that's kind of happening, and that's having knock-on consequences around Test cricket and international cricket. Whether it's too late, I don't know. But I think you're right. I think there is starting to be a consensus gathering that something needs to happen. Some kind of regulation needs to come in to try and help protect parts of the game that people think are important, like Test cricket, and some of the countries that are not as strong economically as England, India, and Australia.
The only counter argument to that is that give people what they want.
Yeah, no,
he just said there, if you remember him say there, Johnny said, we're going to have the favourite format for what the fans want, which is T20 cricket. And is it cricket's job to just give people what they want, which is T20?
I completely understand that, but you could also say that the market has been a little bit skewed as well. It's not been a fair market. If you take, for example, what here in England, the 100, it's given a prime slot in August when kids are on holidays, it's cheap tickets. So you're creating the preconditions for success in certain formats, and that then is having a knock-on effect elsewhere. So it's complex. The issues around the game are broad and complex, and I don't think anybody's got any easy answers, except to say that a world game where the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, the strong get stronger, the weak get weaker is not in the interests of the game. So
completely agree with that.
Who knows where it will go? Anyway, enough from us. We'll see you next week.